All I can say is that if you're thinking of playing this game, then I hope you like Spooky Woods. Heck, this game loves sticking you in spooky woods. You can just imagine Lionhead Mogul and serial under-deliverer Peter Molyneux in the development office peeling the duct tape away from his chafed lips and excitedly screeching, "Why don't we have another Spooky Woods in our greatest RPG of all time?" before being swiftly tackled to the floor by the development team and having the duct tape hurriedly reapplied. "How about this, Pete?" says the level designer. "For every overblown promise you don't make to the public, we'll add another Spooky Woods." And with that, the game was made. Fable Anniversary is the remake of the original Fable, a charming, short action RPG compiled with its expansion, The Lost Chapters. I played the original Lost Chapters back on the PC a few years ago, but never found myself getting too far. Perhaps at the time, I was spoiled with the more open world of Fable 2, which revolutionised the series by letting the player jump fences. Either way, after an hour or so, I'd always lose interest. Recently, however, I sat down and vowed to myself that I'd play all 3 Fable games back to back. Yes, 3. There aren't any others, no matter what anybody says. Anyway, undertaking this noblest and most Herculean of tasks, I played my way through Fable Anniversary on PC. Let's take a look. Starting the game, you're thrust into the role of a young boy running around his home village of Oakvale doing good or bad deeds to raise some cash to buy your sister a birthday present. Right from the get-go, the game pushes the idea that it's going to present you with lots of different moral choices and quests which will determine whether you're going to get a pile of gold or a sack of coal for Christmas. Make no mistake though, Fable's morality doesn't have the nuance of The Witcher or the older Obsidian games. It's closer to BioWare, in the sense that you'll either become a saint or a Saturday morning cartoon villain, twirling your moustaches and giggling furiously. The best way that I can think to describe the morality system of Fable is by sharing a quick anecdote from my own life, back when I worked at a coffee shop. Pull up a chair, grab a beverage, and please indulge me for a few short moments whilst I regale to you my own, mostly true story, the tale of 2 Scottish women. Basically, back when I worked at this coffee shop, we had 2 regulars. They were both elderly Scottish women, about the same height and both in possession of the same hairstyle. The first lady's was blonde, the other was grey. Our nickname for the first lady was Mrs. Doubtfire, as she had this sort of kind air about her and a voice that sounded an awful lot like Robin Williams' impression of an older Scottish woman. She'd come into store and she'd say, "Oh, hello, how are you? I'll have a medium coconut latte, please, 1 short, and a cherry bakewell tart if it's not too much trouble." She had the kind of voice and pleasant disposition whereby she should have found a career in presenting the news, or at least the bad kind. She could be all like, "Oh, let me tell you, it's all kicking off. The nukes are flying back and forth. There's a gigantic comet speeding towards the Earth on a direct collision course with your face, and your nan just exploded. But you know what? I think everything's going to be okay." And I'd believe her. Enter the second woman. "Right, listen here and listen good. I want an extra hot, extra chocolatey, soya hot chocolate. And when I say extra hot, I don't mean, ooh, that singed me way through it on the way down. No. I mean, I will settle for nothing less than gut-busting, molten hot chocolate magma scooped straight from the slopes of Willy Wonka's private volcano. And make it snappy, else I'll give you a big old sloppy Glaswegian kiss," she'd seem to say. Now, of course, conventional reason and logic dictates that these were 2 entirely different people. However, I choose to believe that this was in fact the same person playing their lives in a distinctly Fabulian manner across 2 separate save files. Fable's morality is sort of like that. Once the relatively short introductory sequence is over and you've brought the present to your sister, the plot turns up in the form of a raging bandit raid. You're promptly whisked away to safety by a mysterious mage named Mage, taken to a curious structure that is later revealed to be known as the Heroes Guild. The guild is where you spend the remainder of your childhood, and where you're taught just how to become a hero. Once you've completed the rather standard tutorials outlining how you can beat someone with a stick, shoot an arrow at them, or fart spells in their general direction, you're presented with the quest table. The first quest is straightforward and very British. There are wasps harassing the picnic area. We would rather like it if there weren't any wasps harassing the picnic area, and you've just been freeloading in our school for the last something years, so hop to it and try not to get stung, because I don't know about you, but I've never seen a school nurse on the premises. Upon completion of that first quest is where the game appears to branch out. You'll find that there are 2 more quests on the table, and you'll also notice something glaringly obvious about them. The first is to protect Orchid Farm from bandits, and the second is to team up with the bandits and attack the place. I have questions. Firstly, how awkward would that have been when the orchard farmer and the other quest giver handed in those respective quest cards to the guild? Think they would have made some brief, glowering eye contact and scurried away silently? Secondly, this presents a fundamental problem with how the guild operates. How is the general population of Albion okay with an institute that actively aids and abets criminals? A hero could just march in there, take a legitimate quest to slaughter an entire hamlet, wander off and do the deed before heading back to the guild and getting their reward, without hearing anything about it from the guildmaster beyond, "God blimey, that innocent grandmother got a few good hits in on you. Do you have any potions or food?" The Heroes Guild could use a rebranding, in my opinion, to something more honest, like the Apathetic Heroes Guild, the Amoral Heroes Guild, or even just the Albion PD. I know that the students themselves are known as heroes because of their abilities, and not necessarily their do-gooding, but it's certainly an odd choice to refer to your player character as a hero after he's gone and slaughtered half of Barrow Fields. This becomes a recurring theme throughout the Fable series, though I do think it makes a bit more sense to be a right old evil bugger in later games when you aren't tied to this supposedly legitimate institution. There are a number of these quests scattered throughout the game with their similar jet black or blinding white morality, and it's through quests like these and others that the game tells its story. The first time the plot reintroduced itself, I was quite taken aback, as it was quite jarring. I'd been escorting some traders through the first set of spooky woods and suddenly came upon a nice little market square called Barrow Fields. Next thing I know, I'm back in Oakvale and hello! There's the main quest again. The main story seems presented in such a way that almost every single miscellaneous quest is given to you back at the guild, and then the main quest is just sort of thrown in there occasionally. That's not to say that the main quest isn't intriguing, as for one, you'll discover why Oakvale was raided by bandits, the responsible parties involved, and what the repercussions of this event were. For Oakvale, not much. They just sort of rebuilt and developed an affinity for kicking chickens. I guess getting raided by bandits isn't that big of a deal after all. I don't know what the Roman Empire was moaning about. Regarding the hero's personal and family story, there's quite a bit more there to discover though. I don't have too much to say about the main villain of the tale, Jack of Blades, other than he just turns up being a bit mysterious and ambiguous, and then reappears later as a tyrannical maniac. That's an arc. I think they really nailed it further in the subsequent installments, but even here in Fable Anniversary, the overall sense of humour and joviality shines through. Ultimately, the game doesn't take itself that seriously, which is a serious point in its favour. Concerning the world of Albion itself though, I do very much enjoy the map design. I am perhaps rather biased as it bears a striking resemblance to my own home country of Wales. The name Albion itself derives from ancient Greek, a word referring to the island of Britain itself. I made a bit of a joke at the start of this review regarding this game's predisposition towards sticking the player in a spooky woods at every opportunity, and we all laughed and had a great time at that, but it is true, with at least 3 different locations which fit the bill that I can think of off the top of my head. To be fair, considering Albion is based so heavily on the United Kingdom, I can certainly forgive the presence of so many wooded areas. Thankfully, there are a wide variety of other very interesting and unique locations across the land of Albion to discover. For starters, there are several different towns and cities, all diverse in appearance despite belonging to the same culture. The cobbled streets and stone walls of Bowerstone are far removed from the more Nordic-inspired wooden architecture of Knothole Glade. Additionally, the rebuilt village of Oakvale perfectly captures that fairy tale vibe. It's lovely, and I do hope that nothing further untoward happens to it. Besides spooky woods, you'll encounter several different environments in which to undertake your hero work outside of town. There are long coastal paths, highlands, and even snowy wastes by the time you get to the Lost Chapters content. I must say that I was rather impressed with the visuals playing it now on a PC in 2023. The land of Albion certainly looks very sharp and pretty, considering that it is an Xbox 360 port of an original Xbox game. I'd say that the character models leave a little bit to be desired, but the surroundings themselves are a real pleasure to look at. The world of Fable Anniversary is very much confined to the various pathways that you have to follow, but thankfully this is addressed in the sequel. The gameplay is where Fable starts to show some real innovation, and I'd say it certainly has its good points. Instead of choosing your class at the start of the game, which is a staple for many other kinds of RPGs, you instead earn 4 sets of experience points based on how you choose to play. These are green General XP, red Strength XP, yellow Skill XP, and blue Will XP. Should you start the game flinging fireballs like a drunk wizard at a fireworks display, you'll find you suddenly have enough experience to invest in even more magical spells, of which the game features a wide variety, more so than either of its sequels, interestingly. In addition to how the character plays, it will also affect their appearance, as our aforementioned budding magic user will find blue will lines appear all over his body as they invest more points into spells. In a similar fashion, a skill user will find themselves growing taller, and a strength user will become totally ripped. It is not only the investment of XP that affects the hero's appearance either, as they will visibly age across the course of the game, although I didn't notice too much of that when I played, and their look will also change based on how naughty or nice you are. I was caught off guard by this as my character, originally brown-haired, had been wearing a helmet for quite some time. I took it off to discover that he was suddenly fantastically and fabulously blonde. With his curtains, will lines, and goatee, he looked like a washed-up Backstreet Boy at a rave, deeply thrust amidst the gnarling throngs of a brutal midlife crisis. In terms of the actual combat, it's fun. It can be quite satisfying to use a great big nasty sword to mow down bandits, but doing too much of the same thing can be quite repetitive, particularly in the arena quest, which goes on for quite a while. To this end, I invested heavily in both strength and skill to keep things interesting, and that mostly did remedy the issue. In addition, a lot of the spells add quite a variety of gameplay as they all behave and can be used rather differently. Some even complement other disciplines, such as a magic spell which increases the amount of melee damage you do by stacking the amount of hits per swing. Whilst the magic may have felt more fun and gamey in later Fable entries, I do think that it has the best roster and implementation of the magic system by far in this first game here. I feel as though I may have been a little bit more critical of Fable Anniversary than I have of previous games in this Having a Mosey series. I think that this is perhaps because Fable as a series in general comes so agonisingly close to greatness, so it's frustrating to see a series with so many innovative and wonderful ideas get bogged down by odd storytelling choices and wobbly game design. Having said that, I do still think that these games were way ahead of their time, and despite not living up to the frankly ludicrous promises of what they were supposed to be, they're still amazing experiences for what they are. Fittingly, 19th century British author and unconfirmed Fable fan Charles Dickens once wrote that it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, It was the epoch of incredulity. It was the console generation of solid gameplay ideas. It was the console generation in which they couldn't be implemented properly. In the meantime, thank you for taking this Albion-flavoured trip down memory lane with me. There's still a lot of fun to be had with Fable Anniversary, particularly factoring in the Lost Chapters content, which adds a whole new snow-capped region to explore. I've always been a sucker for a good snow level. I find them cozy, so I particularly enjoyed that stretch of the game. Replaying Fable Anniversary again recently for the purposes of recording for this video, I found myself pleasantly surprised with how much the game had actually gone up in my estimation compared to when I'd originally drafted this review months ago. Having said all of that, I still like Fable 2 better. But in the meantime, please consider joining me next time when I'll be talking about a different game. We'll be starting Season 2 of the Having a Mosey series and returning once more to the medieval land of Alefgard, though perhaps via making an extra stop or two along the way.